Okay, how about this? Let's focus on transparency in form-meaning relationship. Okay, now, transparency here means how straightforwardly the given form is related to the meaning it expresses. So for example, so we're talking about form-meaning relationship, right? So in order to acquire language, what learners have to do is they have to think about the meaning, and then they have to attach it to the form that expresses meaning, right? And that is known as form-meaning relationship. So the more straightforward the relationship is, the easier it is usually to acquire that morpheme, right? Okay, so for example, which of the following morphemes are more transparent in their form-meaning relationships if you compare these two, plural s and third person singular s? What do you think? Okay, I hope you'd say plural s is more transparent because plural s means there's more than one books. Okay, so two or three books instead of just one book, right? Okay, as opposed to third person singular s. What does it mean? What does third person singular s mean? Actually, it doesn't really mean anything except that its functional meaning is whatever the subject that you have for that verb is a third person, not the first person I, second person you. So it's got to be he or she or Tom or Jane, right? Third person and the singular, okay, and the present tense. Okay, that's what it means. That is a grammatical concept and not necessarily easy for learners to acquire, to grasp, right? And so in this case, yeah, plural s is actually acquired earlier. Now, still, that makes you wonder, how about past tense ed? Okay, what is the form meaning relationship with past tense ed? Ed, whenever you have ed, walked, studied, right? Okay, and that means something that happened yesterday or the day before in the past, right? Okay, it's relatively straightforward. Okay, both plural and past tense ed may seem to be transparent in terms of their form meaning relationship. It's kind of hard to argue which is more transparent in this case. Okay, but plural s is acquired earlier than past tense ed. Maybe this notion about past is difficult for little kids, yes, but maybe for adults as well. Okay, so again, there have to be other explanations. How about communicative value? Communicative value here refers to the degree to which how important the form is to convey the meaning in communication. Okay, so how important it is for communication. Okay, technically, there are two features in determining communicative value. So one is known as inherent semantic value, okay, and that has to do with what meaning the morpheme contributes to communication. And another factor to consider is redundancy. So is there anything else in the discourse that signals its meaning? Okay, if there's redundancy, that reduces the communicative value of the form. Okay, so consider these forms: progressive ing, past tense ed, and third person singular s again. Okay, what do you think? Which one do you think has greater communicative value, lesser communicative value? In terms of inherent semantic value for progressive ing, what does it mean? What meaning does it contribute to communication? It's ongoing, right? Okay, so I would say plus. Okay, how about redundancy? Is it redundant? Is there anything in the sentence that signals its meaning? He's playing soccer. Okay, I'm listening to music. Okay, actually, there's nothing else. So yeah, it's not redundant. Ing is the form, is the morpheme that signals this progressiveness, right? Okay, now compare that with past tense ed. Does it have any inherent semantic value? I would say, yeah, sure, pastness, right? Okay, now how about redundancy? Is it redundant? Okay, this is a very good question, but actually, sometimes it's redundant and sometimes it's not redundant. So I would say plus or minus. Why do I say that? Because if you say, I worked very hard yesterday, okay, if you say that, the adverb yesterday indicates that you're talking about past. So there's actually no more reason for the learner to have to pay attention to ed part, right? Okay, so sometimes I say that with an adverb, some time ago, yesterday, long time ago, right? Okay, but sometimes I might not say any adverb, but instead I say I worked very hard yesterday. No, I said yesterday. I worked very hard. And so the learners have to pay attention to the ed part to interpret its meaning that is past, right? So it depends on whether you use adverbs of time or not, right? So yeah, redundancy is plus minus in this case. How about third person singular s? Inherent semantic value is minus, and redundancy is plus. Okay, inherent semantic value, like I said, third person singular s does not really have any meaning, okay, as far as communication is concerned. Redundancy, well, it's highly redundant because he speaks English. The moment you say he, we all know that you're talking about third person, right? So S is already redundant, highly redundant, right? Okay, so in this scale, we would say there's greater communicative value for ing, and ed can be in the middle, and third person singular s has the lowest communicative value. Okay, now, and in fact, progressive ing is acquired earlier than past tense ed. Ed is acquired earlier than third person singular s. Okay, yeah. So we just mentioned about all these different factors here, but later research actually confirmed that a combination of all these factors, okay, and syntactic complexity and other factors contribute. They're combined together and to determine the acquisition order of these morphemes. So it's probably not just one factor, but a combination of these factors. Okay, and so I think the entire picture is it's a little complicated here, but it's probably very, very reasonable if you think about it. Okay, so pedagogical applications. In terms of pedagogical applications, later studies actually try to apply these findings to see whether we could actually utilize them for any teaching. Okay, so here are some ideas very quickly here. How can these ideas be incorporated in the applications for language teaching? Input frequency has been applied as in the form of input flood, which is a technique of artificially increasing the occurrence of a particular form in the input. So you try to use preposition, for example, a lot more than usual when you want to teach preposition. So this is known as input flood. Saliency can be manipulated pedagogically as well in the form of input enhancement. So input enhancement is a technique in which you artificially enhance the form in the input. If it's oral communication, you can emphatically say the form, okay? Or in order to just emphasize past tenseness, is like the. Okay, you can emphasize that. Or in writing, you can bold it, underline it, italicize it. There are many different techniques. Okay, so but the point here is just to increase the saliency, okay, and see what happens. Transparency in form meaning relationship. Okay, can you change that? Well, what researchers tried to do was by way of what they called processing instruction. They try to remove the redundancy of the form, okay, redundancy to make the learners process the form. So for example, I mentioned about the past tense. If adverb like yesterday or the other day, adverbial phrase occurs, and then students can know that it's past by paying attention to those adverbials, which are, by the way, much more salient, right? The other day or yesterday as compared to the, right? Okay. But then you push the learners, okay, and to pay attention to the D part or ED part, for example, or S part, for example, by removing the redundancy, by removing, for example, many or yesterday, okay? And then ask the learners to pay attention to the morpheme part in order to choose, for example, the right pictures from whatever choices that they're given, okay? That is known as processing instruction. It's a very interesting technique. Okay, and one more is communicative value. Okay, and so this is realized as pedagogically realized as pushed output. And that is simply pushing learners to attend to the form by asking clarification questions. So if they are not using past tense, for example, once again, you can push them to say, are you saying, did you say, what did you say? Okay, often what happens is that learners try to rephrase it. So in other words, they're primed to pay attention to the form, which they may not have paid attention to the first time around. Okay, so there have been actually a number of second language acquisition studies that have tested the uniqueness, the effectiveness of these different techniques. Okay, and some of them I hope we'll be able to talk about in my second semester course on focus and form. Okay, so just a preview here. Okay, so let's summarize. Summary. So we have been talking about development of interlanguage here, right? So we can continue to talk more and more about it for the rest of the course. But as a summary, okay, tentative summary for now. So we have learned that interlanguage is influenced by a number of factors here, okay? So we have talked about, for example, input frequency, saliency, form meaning relationship, communicative value, right? Okay, but we talked about other things. L1, yes, we can't ignore that. Okay, not in the behavior sense, but in another sense. L1 is still important. Of course, communication opportunities, input exposure, right? And whether they receive feedback or not, what kind of feedback. And we didn't talk about processability, but we will talk about it soon, right? How much the learners can process the given forms in input or in the output can also affect the development of the interlanguage. Formal complexity of the forms in question. And we haven't talked about this, but we will. Universal grammar may play a role. Universal markedness, which is a little bit different from universal grammar here. And instruction, hopefully, will have influence on interlanguage. Learner's motivation, you would agree probably that it will influence interlanguage formation, development. And last but not least, learner's language learning aptitude, maybe working memory capacity. Okay, and there are differences among individuals too, right? So if you look at this, then you'd understand how complex language second language acquisition really is. Okay, and instruction. Okay, no matter how strongly we want to believe in the role of instruction, is actually only one of those many factors that affect interlanguage. And this may not even have any privilege status. Okay, so that's something that all teachers need to keep in mind. Okay, so interlanguage development is very complex, but very dynamic as well. Okay, so let me stop my lecture here for today. Okay, see you.